Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. How are y'all?
We are good. We are weathering rain. Both of us.
Yeah, we had it last night, and then we have a tropical or a hurricane coming up our way, so we'll get that, more of it.
Where are you based out of?
North Carolina.
Okay. I'm in Florida, and then V's in New York.
You're right in between us.
So we're all East Coast.
Yes.
Well, I'm so glad that you guys joined us, and I'm wearing my keeper kit because
we needed to grab our jerseys. We're terribly unprepared.
It just had to happen. Any excuse I have to wear it, I will do it. So
we love that.
Okay, well, let's jump right in. So for everyone who is joining us, we're talking about Close Knit. I don't have the beautiful hard copy, but y'all do. It's so purple and beautiful. But before we do that, I wanted you guys to kind of just tell us a little bit about you and how you've gotten to this point. What's your journey been like as writers?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Kels. This is Denise, and we have been writing together for the past almost 3 years, if you can believe. And Close Knit is our 5th book together, 7th if you include our little novellas that we have snuck in. We write impactful love stories, and we started writing together at the beginning of 2021, and it was supposed to be for just a book, and now we are 5 books later.
That's so fun. So did you guys both write prior, like individually prior to this?
Yeah, so we had actually met because we were both book talk creators in the major heyday and beginnings of book talk being a thing on TikTok. Pardon if you hear my puppy. I'm so sorry. And we had met because Kels had slid into my DMs on TikTok, and we were like, oh, we really hit it off. And what was meant to be like a 30-minute phone call of like, hello, nice to meet you, ended up being a 3 to 4 hour conversation. We were like, hey, this is really fun. We kind of get along. Let's write a book together.
I love that so much. Well, we're definitely going to get into like your writing process and how you guys do that together. But before we do, I do want to talk about Close Knit. So will one of you or both of you, if you want to, give us just a general synopsis?
Yeah, so Close Knit follows, I'm going to show, the character art is too good not to show. So it follows Cameron Hastings, who is a grumpy Premier League goalkeeper, and he has an anonymous one-night stand with a knitting influencer, Daphne Quinn, and they end up being neighbors, and Cameron goes through a journey of transferring to a new team and not getting along with his teammates, and Daphne is on this year of yes, and together Daphne helps him make friends, and he helps her have some yes-year adventure.
So where did you get the inspiration? So I don't know why I didn't know it, but I really had no clue that the knitting influencer thing was even a thing. So how did you like come to that as something you were gonna do?
So I had actually picked up knitting randomly, needing to be off screen. And Kels was like, I used to knit too. My grandma taught me. And we kind of just like started doing it as a hobby that we can like share together. So we started buying some kits. You can get some at We Are Knitters, not sponsored, but we love them very much. And they're like great for beginners. And we kind of just like immediately were like, this is fun. This is great. And when you look at like our community, you think of like, well, we're book creators. That's a bit odd too if you tell anybody, right? You're like, what do you mean you read books and post about it online? And there's a whole entire community of knitters doing the exact same thing. And so we were like, you know what? Why not a knitting influencer? It's a really cozy hobby, and to us it kind of is like an equivalent to reading as well, because it's of the same, like both pair very well together.
Well, what kind of, obviously you have that personal experience, but was there any other kind of research you had to do? Like, are you guys both Premier League fans, or how did that all come to be?
Yeah, so I've been watching the World Cup for years and years. And so the Premier League, actually, I knew it existed, but it kind of came to fruition when we were watching Ted Lasso, and then we got really into it. And so then we just started watching a ton of documentaries and learning the ins and outs, because it's one thing to like know about the sport, but then know about the league is an entirely different thing that we spent months researching. And when I say researching, we're mostly looking at edits of Ruben Diaz and
don't come for us.
and then and really just learning about each specific position, because we wanted to make sure that his position really aligned with his character growth in the book. But yeah, we had a lot of fun researching the Premier League.
Yeah, keeper is my favorite position. So like anytime I see that as the main character, I get so happy. And then yeah, we are diehard Premier League fans. We are the people that get up at like 6:30 every weekend, every morning to watch. And so it was really thrilling because you guys also included a lot of actual like on-page football, which I feel like you don't get all the time. So was that something you intended all the time?
Yeah, definitely. I think we wanted to stay very true to the sport as well. And I think like following kind of like the pattern of, we really enjoyed the pacing of Ted Lasso. Not that the entire sport came from this, and Ted Lasso was more of a complementary thing to when we decided Cameron was going to be a football player, a soccer player. We had known that a couple of years ago. But we had watched Ted Lasso and loved the pacing. So we loved that they showed like the sport, and we loved that they talked about the issues. And we kind of wanted to draw a little bit of the pacing on that, and also just show like the on-field sport, because if you're playing, it's really fun if you know what's going on the field. And we did our best to kind of want to make the person feel like they're reading it as though they're Cam and experiencing it as well.
Yeah. And my husband plays once a week, and I get to go watch him, and it's like so much fun seeing all the guys run around in their uniforms, and it was really good research.
Yeah. So have you guys picked like teams?
We cannot, I cannot say this here. I feel like it's too divisive of a topic.
Well, most of the players that we researched were on Man City. So do you have a team?
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like anyone that has like really come into it recently loves Man City, which is fair because they're on top of the world right now. But I'm a Tottenham gal, which is painful, but it's just the way it is. So
it goes through phases and periods and coaches.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see. I'm not holding my breath for anything, but you guys have fun with Man City because they're taking over the world. Kind of looking into Daphne, she is such a fun character because obviously this knitting community, and she's just like sunshine embodied. And nice girls, they always, no one likes to talk about nice girls because it's like they're boring or whatever. They just get bad reputation. So why do you feel like that was an important element to include as her character?
So we personally have felt the opposite end of that spectrum. So we've written a lot of like gritty female characters, and have felt like, wow, those girls are not the most palatable all the time, which is why we love writing them. But Daphne was like an opportunity for us to have a very compassionate and empathetic character, and like that's her strength. And I feel like with all of our characters, like niceness isn't ever a bad quality. It's the thing that propels you forward. And I feel like for Daphne to have had a lot of her empathy and compassion come from bullying, and her reaction to the world be like, instead of being an angry person, which like some of our female main characters are, not speaking from personal experience there, it's nice to see the way that she kind of attacks the world with love and compassion and kindness, and doesn't ever ruminate too long on anything that like is bothering her. She kind of just tries to propel forward. She was mostly also kind of a cheerleader for us, because it was so nice to write
cheerleading.
It was so nice to write a character whose head we enjoyed being in, especially as two people who deal with anxiety. Just to take the other side of the spectrum of like, wow, you can be positive and still be crazy anxious. Like, it was just a very big pleasure to be in her head.
Well, and both of them have such distinct voices, and you already kind of touched on Cameron and how he was struggling to get along with his teammates, and then we've got her, and they're very different. So how do you approach writing different points of view?
Our first step in in all of our books is spending a lot of time with our characters. And so we do exploration for about a month that we're kind of doing with our characters. We're writing journal entries. We're really trying to get into the mind of that character. Like, what are they doing on a Friday afternoon or a Sunday morning? Like, are they going grocery shopping? Are they prepping for their week? And this character approach before we start plotting the entire book really helps us understand who they are and what they want to say. And they start talking to us, and Cameron just was grunting a lot. And we're here, like Dee said, like really such a pleasure to be with, because she is how we want to approach the world every day. And so I absolutely adored Daphne.
Well, we've already touched on a lot of these, but you guys wrote a lot of heavy topics like bullying, anxiety, hazing, mental health, just things that can be weighty. So how do you intertwine these with such heartfelt and hopeful experiences?
I love that question so much because I think it kind of touches back to our values of like impactful love stories. I think the thing that we want everyone to take away from our books is that life is not a pretty thing all the time. And that you're going to go through hardships, and it's really all about the community that you have around you. But it's also important to remember that not only can you have a really bad day and can you have a series of bad months like poor Cameron has, but there will come a time where you'll get an opportunity to say yes to something that might make you feel a little better. And we kind of want to make sure that everyone knows that you can cry one day and get tied up with yarn the next, and life goes on and everything is okay, and it's just part of the cycle. So to us, it's really combining the positive and the negative experiences together and kind of making sure that everyone feels seen and feels hopeful after reading our book.
I love that so much. So I don't want to give too much away for people that haven't read it, but physical intimacy is definitely like something that is a beginning stage for Cameron and Daphne. So I love how you guys explored this, but also kind of like looking at pleasure from a different way. And there's like a specific scene where it's intimate, but it's not necessarily what you typically experience in the reading. So like, why was it important for you all to write this scene and then scenes like this specifically?
Yeah, so all of our intimacy scenes are really with a purpose. We really want to tackle it in a way of like, what do these characters need and what is the intimacy going to show these characters? And so without giving too much away, we are horrible with spoilers.
It's okay. It's a serious topic in the book, so that's not a spoiler.
So like I think a lot of women that we've talked to in our real lives has dealt with being intimate with someone and not being able to cross the finish line. We'll keep it PG for IG. And that was really important for us because I think we hadn't explored that dynamic in a book. And I feel like it felt really right for Daphne and Cameron, because I think Cameron needed to be okay with not being able to fix that problem. And I think in our personal lives, we wish more men treated that situation with kind of respect, because it's not always you, especially when there's medicine involved. And Daphne is on fluoxetine. And so kind of her being okay with it and then him not pressuring her or making her feel weird about it was extremely important. And we wanted to approach it with so much care, because I feel like anybody reading that book is going to approach that in some time in their life, and making sure that you have kind of not a guideline, but looking at something. I wish I read more stuff like that made it seem like it was okay.
And I think also we kind of try to approach intimacy in all of our books, like Kel said, to make sure that every couple shines for what the scenes are. So in a lot of our books, people get tied up, but it's mostly to speak to a sense of trust and loss of control. And like that is a topic that you really do have to explore when you're having like intimacy with a partner. And I feel like a moment like that for Daphne and Cameron, especially when their relationship started so hot and they have all of this like fire and it's just like amazing and it's shooting stars, and it's like what the beginning of every relationship is typically like. It's just like fireworks. It's important to remember that light kicks in, Like I've been with my partner for 9 years. There are a lot of those moments where things are just not cooking, and that's okay. And like you have to be like, okay, this can't happen. Intimacy does not have to end in a firework. Intimacy can end with an ember. And so like giving Daphne that ember and having them like, you know, cuddle and watch a movie is like a very normal thing to do. There's always tomorrow. There's always even 3 hours from now. You know, like and writing that I think was really really important because it's super true to who they are. Like Daphne needed to one just feel safe and know that she was okay. And yeah, like Kel said, like Cameron needed to not fix it. This man has had every one night stand possible. I'm sure he has had women so happy to be with him. But I feel like this was a first for him to be able to like step back and be like, maybe I'm not going to be the star in this one particular moment, and that was just really fun to write. We were definitely a little bit like, how are people going to feel about the scene? Because it doesn't end in like the traditional sparkly, beautiful way you'd want a spicy scene to end, but it's our favorite.
Well, I loved that too because, like you guys have already said, it's just not something you see very often, even though it's not uncommon. And I loved how the like internal dialogue that he was having was like, I'm I'm having like the best experience of my life. I'm in this beautiful place with this person I care so much about, but I'm letting this like feel like failure. And then to like change that mindset, I think was really special and really important to see. So I loved that a lot, which that's I guess spoilery, but sorry.
Yeah, it's total. I think like that is a scene that's extremely important to us and like a cornerstone of the book. And I think also because we talk about toxic masculinity so much in the book, it was important to have a man be like, "This is not for me to fix," and like that's an important thing. I've spoken to my partner. We've read a lot of Reddit, a lot of Reddit on how men feel about not being able to do this one thing, and it is not good. Like it does not feel good, and they put a lot of pressure on themselves. So it was nice to, even though guys maybe are not our target audience, to give them the opportunity to go ahead and read an alternative to the situation.
Yeah, and playing off of that, I think it was also important to us for her not to just fake it, because I think a lot of women in that situation would have just been like, okay, I'm good. But instead of her like using her voice and being like, she's so confident, and we love that she's so confident to be like, no, it's not happening.
Which also just speaks a lot to consent, and I feel like we've kind of writing intimacy scenes together as a duo. There's a lot of conversations that go on about not just the fun logistics, but like the actual impact of like intimacy. And like Daphne was able to say like, hey, this was working, but not anymore. And like I feel like that just like consent is an ongoing thing in any intimate interaction. And so for her to be able to, I wouldn't say revoke her consent, but in a way of be like, there is no more consent to give because I'm done. So like that was an important thing to do.
Yeah, well, it was a really incredible scene, and I'm glad to know that that was so important to you guys because it was really impactful, like as a reader, and so like to know that that was very, very intentional. It shows, and that's something you guys should definitely be proud of because it was so great.
That feels really nice to hear. Thank you.
We love a little praise.
Yeah.
Always, always. So there does come a point where they ultimately do have to choose their own individual health and each like themselves. And obviously, like this is, well, maybe it's not obvious, but it is a crucial thing for people in everyday life and in their relationships. So why do you feel like it was important to showcase that?
I think both of us being in long-term relationships, I think that there is a kind of feeling that you want to fix the other person. And I think Cameron has a lot of healing that he needs to do with the book. And I think Daphne needs someone who is not going to put that on her. And because she's such a positive person, she doesn't need to have someone bring her down. And so I feel like Cameron needed to step away and heal. And I think like without being like passive aggressive or like toxic towards her, and like just telling her like, I know I'm not handling this well. And he got a trigger and he goes to therapy and he gets the diagnosis. And I feel like that was really important because at every single point of the story, we did not want Daphne to like fix Cameron's problems. Yeah. So for this book specifically, that was on the forefront of our minds because I've been in a relationship where I think that I need to fix someone's problem, and that is just toxic to me and the other person because you're not giving that other person space to heal. And it's not saying that you're never going to be with this person or have you, but I think like people need their own individual healing, and you can have people support you, but you can't lean your whole weight onto them.
Yeah, I love that. And I think when we started this series, because this will be a series of siblings, something that we were really focused on was the fact that because the Hastings are extremely intense, extremely committed to their sports, they're at the highest level of their sport, every single one of them. What does their partner look like, and what kind of role does their partner play? Because we've seen a lot of relationships where a person's life can revolve around the other person, and that's not a relationship. That ends up not being a partnership, I think is more what I'm trying to say. And we wanted to make sure that like both of them were extreme individuals. And so like Cameron having to step back to take care of himself, it is not fun being in his head, throughout the book. It is very sad. And like Daphne doesn't actually even understand the extent of what it's like to be in his head. He shares bits and pieces with her, but him having to say, I needed to take a step back because I'm going to do something I regret. Like I might put all of this ugliness I'm afraid to even admit I have onto you, was a really like big growth moment for him, because he actually decided to prioritize someone else along with himself, which was a very big win. And Daphne being able to say like, I'm going to go somewhere else because I have the flexibility to, and I'm going to continue with my life because I love this man, but I love me. And that kind of just comes back to like, they're both individuals. They both get to kind of thrive in their own right. And once Cameron is ready to admit where his shortcomings were and kind of how he's going to handle the rest of these events going forward, and Daphne saying, well, can I deal with that or not? I feel like that's when they got to really strengthen their relationship and actually choose each other rather than just be people who live next door to each other who have a lot of great fun sex and a good time.
I love that perspective. I know I've been with my husband for 15 years and it doesn't happen often, but when it does happen, people ask like, what's your biggest tip? And I'm always like, just let them be who they are. That's always what I've said from the moment anyone ever asked me that question. And it's funny because a couple seasons ago, there's a line in Ted Lasso, and it's actually about Rupert, and they just say, let Rupert be Rupert. And I say that all the time because it's like that is my key piece of advice for every relationship. And you just like talking about that really kind of connects with that, and it's in theme because it explores Ted Lasso too. So
yeah. No, I love that so much. It's so hard to do, especially when you start a relationship really young. For both of them, this is their first love, right? Like for Daphne, she's had a boyfriend, but like that wasn't serious. And Cameron loves his ball. He loves no other things. And so like they both could have that relationship could have very easily in the real world turned very codependent.
Yeah.
Like very codependent. And it was fun to kind of be like, no, we want them to survive. Like we want them to actually like survive through the rest of the series. There's someone on TikTok who does these great videos of like, did the couple stay together? And we want Cameron and Daphne to stay together after the epilogue. And so like they needed that to happen to stay together permanently.
Yeah, I loved that part of their relationship. I think again, it's not something you see every time you pick up a book. It's very much like these are two individual people that are going to choose to have a life together, but they need to be themselves and be comfortable with it. So I love that. I know we're kind of close on time, so I want to skip through, but one of the most popular questions I ask that people love to see the answers for is, have you fan casted your characters and who are they?
Yeah, so for Daphne, we love Lily Reinhart. She's yeah. So
imagine her with some purple hair. That's our Daphne.
mm-hmm. And then he doesn't act, but Ruben Diaz.
He's just scrumptious. We know he's not a keeper. There is a keeper a Portuguese keeper who looks very similar to Cameron. But it's Ruben Diaz for us.
All right, I'll take it. And what I do want to touch on your writing process because it is unique since you are co-authors. So can you just give us a little bit insight into that?
Yeah, Kels.
Yeah, I can do it. So we have tried everything under the sun. I think that we recently found out that our writing style is very similar to Krista and Becca Ritchie, which is like we outline and draft everything together. So every word that you read is touched by the both of us, and we play to each other's strengths and weaknesses. And like, I'm really good at putting words on a paper. D is so good at crafting like the most scrumptious sentence. Like, there's no like jealousy or anything. So there is like always that first time when you're writing a book where you're drafting and you're like, please don't judge me for what I'm reading. But there has to be that level of like comfortability with each other that we're not judging, because at the end of the day, our main goal is like to get the best book possible. And so everything that we write and draft is something that we're both really proud of.
I love that. So neither one of you just take like one section and say, this is my chapter or this is my character.
No.
We tried that. It did not work out for us. We realized like I have this joke of like we share one brain cell, even though we're complete opposites from each other. A lot of like our values and the way we perceive the world is very similar. And so when we end up getting into our characters, it's easier to do them together. It literally looks like imagine you're like layering a cake. Like that's like how we write. It's just like one on top of the other. It requires a ton of trust and a lot of like just being able to let go of things. There's so many jokes that don't make it. There's so many lines that like never see the light of day. But it's because like one of us is like championing a good portion of the book and we like try to push it forward. The entire goal is to make sure that we have the best book possible.
Well, I love that illustration with it like being like a cake. How do you guys manage to like navigate press and marketing, writing schedule, engaging with your readers, all of that, especially as having to work with two different calendars?
We don't know how to navigate it.
Yeah. We haven't figured it out yet. No.
I think communication is like what we build like any relationship. Communication is a godsend, and also Notion. We have everything in Notion that we kind of like plan and schedule everything out. And both of us have the best thing about being two people is that we both have our strengths and weaknesses. Like Dee is responsible for every post you see on Instagram. She is like the post queen, and then
the reason you are able to read our books at all. It is the reason books make it where they need to go. It is the reason things are uploaded on time. The reason our business functions.
Yeah, I think like having two people really help. I don't understand how anybody does this alone. And we also have a that we have built over the years with like editors and just like people who champion our books. So some periods of time it's really difficult to like keep our head above water, especially like right before a release or right before we're sending a book. But now that it's really after release, we kind of like take a breath, and so we know the cycle and we know when we're gonna have breaks and when we're not gonna leave our desk for 2 weeks.
There you go. Well, what is maybe one piece of advice that you guys have for writers or aspiring writers?
Yeah, so I think it's a piece of advice that we always kind of tell ourselves as well, is when you're writing your first draft, just tell yourself the story. You're not allowed to judge anything you're putting down because that is useless. That is not your voice. That is just a mini pants in your brain for no reason. So tell yourself the story. Make sure that there is a story to start, even if it's like 1,000-word story. Ta-da, that's your story. And then you go back and start to revise and criticize and get advice from people. And I think like what we have learned over the years is like build a team of champions around you who really understand the core values of your stories. I think where we have always been so grateful is our developmental editor has been with us since our first book, and she has just seen what we can do and will constantly push our writing forward. And so like, I think just like continuously challenge yourself and don't judge yourself on that first draft. That thing just needs to be there.
Yeah.
That thing just needs to be there. It's like the base paint. know, you can't hang up the base paint.
Yeah. Like your ego needs to be thrown over your
ego needs to go out the window.
Or you're not going to get it done. And like that is a shame because I feel like so many people out here with like beautiful stories that are meant to be told and they just need to put them on the paper. And I think anybody can be a writer. They just have to like, it's a lot of work, but
if you want to put in the work, you can do it.
Okay, well, I don't want to keep you guys too long, but I would love to know, you kind of touched on it already, but what is next for you two and this series?
Who?
You two.
So, each of the at this moment, if we always like to leave it up to if we want to change our mind, but at this moment, each of the Hastings siblings will be getting a book. You were introduced to all of them in Close Knit, not to their partners, but they're all
one lingering partner if you caught them.
Yeah, exactly. And so each of them, so On Guard is going to be the next book, which follows Dante, which is the other middle child, and he is a fencer, and we're having so much fun planning that book. That book comes out in April. So
he's scrumptious, and his story is going to definitely be hot.
That's so exciting. So I only watch two sports. I watch football and I watch F1. And so knowing that there's an F1 coming, I'm very excited.
Francesca
I'm
is on our hot list. We are very excited for her book.
Well,
she has a very cool story.
I know that you guys are leaving it open to change your mind, but hopefully that one comes through.
As of right now, we'll give you a little only for the people. It might be number 3, but maybe.
Okay. Well, you didn't hear it here.
Here first.
And then one last question I thought of as we were talking. How difficult was it for you guys to write? Because I was so thrilled that you kept it as football the whole way through. And I know for a lot of markets, they change it to soccer. And so what was the choice? Like, was it just no choice at all that was definitely going to happen? Or did you guys get pushback on that?
No, that was definitely going to happen. I'm also from Europe, so to me, it's football always. To me, it's not soccer. So that's why we have that funny joke with when she's in the common room with everybody, and she's like, I don't know anything about soccer. And they're like, oh, Jackie, it's football. But like that was like something that like having moved to the States, when I would say it's football, they would be like, it's soccer. I'm like, no, it isn't. So that was never going to be anything that wasn't going to be in the story. And also when you're writing the Premier League, it's not Premier League soccer, it's Premier League football. So like we wanted to stay true to that.
Yeah. And then for marketing, we do say soccer just for the purpose of our American audience, which is a huge portion of our audience. But we have gotten some comments of like, it's football, but we know it's football.
We know it's football.
Yeah, but it's, when you live here, it's always a pain. One way or the other, it's going to be painful. But I love it so much. What?
I said we have to say this is the better football anyways.
Yeah.
Obviously.
There's no concussions, no high concussion rates. Anyway,
well, you guys just lost a really valuable player, though, with Rodri in Man City. So
not a great
I know, not concussions, but other stuff happens.
That's true.
So true.
Well, y'all, thank you so much. This has been such a delight, and I hope that everyone goes out and reads it. It's the first book in the series, so you're starting fresh, and it's just so much fun. And hopefully you guys can come back for one of the next ones. And
thank you for having us. This was so much fun.
Yeah, thank y'all. Have a great night, everyone.
You too.
Bye.